Welcome to season 3 of Two Girls with Grief. I'm Rachel.
And I'm Kendel, and together we're just two girls figuring out how to live with grief the best we can.
This season, we wanted to have real conversations about building a beautiful life with grief. Because while grief never fully goes away, we believe it's still possible to build a life that holds love, joy, and even hope alongside it.
Our hope is that these episodes will be a resource for both new and seasoned grievers, whether you're in the early days of loss or years down the road.
And just a reminder, we're not professionals. We're just professional grievers. This is a safe place for honest stories, tools, and reflections that remind you you're not alone in this.
So thank you for being here, for listening, and for letting us share this season with you. We're so grateful you're with us for season 3, Building a Beautiful Life with Grief. Welcome back to Two Girls with Grief. Today's theme is about living beautifully with grief, and we have a guest who embodies that in such a powerful way.
Sabrina, who many of you might know as SabForTony on TikTok and Instagram, lost her husband Tony and has since created a platform where she shares her raw and honest grief journey. She's built an incredible community, over 100,000 on TikTok, while moving to New York City and starting her Living Well series about trying to live fully despite grief. We're so honored to have her here.
Before we dive in, let's check in with each other. Rachel, has there been a moment this week where you have felt like you've tried to live more fully while you are carrying a lot of grief yourself?
I say like I'm in my yes era and just trying to go for things. I got invited to go to a concert this weekend, so I'm going to go to that. And then next weekend I got invited to like a wine event. So I feel like I'm just like saying yes to things. And as I say yes to more things are coming up. So I feel like been a beautiful reminder to me to keep going. And the more that I open myself up to yeses, the more I start receiving them. What about you, Kendel?
Yeah, I think for myself, it's been reconnecting with a lot of old friends and people I haven't seen in a long time and catching up on like years past and just trying to be more vulnerable and open and trust that my therapy and healing has done its job and trying to actually live out some of those practices in real life.
It's awesome. So, Sabrina, for those who are just meeting you, can you take us back to your story with Tony and what led you to create SabForTony?
Ooh, yes. So SabForTony, actually, my account originally was Sab and Tony. So I had started it around the time when TikTok first was created and people were getting onto the app. So that was around the time when Tony and I moved in together and we had gotten legally married. So originally it was supposed to be a channel for me to just share snippets of married life and just be able to share, like the sweet moments, but also honestly, our dynamic was always pretty much like goofing around or like me making fun of him. And like Tony wasn't really a huge social media person, but I just really wanted to like share simple moments of us being married and our day-to-day life and just have fun on the app. I don't even remember what my first video was, but it was definitely something to do with working from home and also being married and living with a man, because that was like the first time I've ever done that. So it was a huge learning experience. And then after Tony passed, I had changed my channel to SabForTony. And that was also a weird phase because it felt weird having a channel Sab and Tony when Tony wasn't here physically anymore. So I really wanted to make that channel dedicated to celebrating the love that Tony and I shared, sharing about my grief journey of being a young widow. So it has kind of evolved with me throughout, but yeah, originally it started off as not so much a couple channel, but really just me showing snippets of our life.
Crazy, such a big change of I want to document us together.
Mm-hmm.
And then instead it's become documenting you without him.
Yeah.
I've seen you repost so many videos of Tony and like memories. And it's very bittersweet, right? It's such a nice thing to have. That's like the beauty of technology is like you have those memories and you can look back on them.
Yeah, definitely. It's really become my own diary. I don't know if you guys do this too, but I look back at my videos all the time. Just like if I want to cry, I'll like go down a rabbit hole of watching my videos and just seeing what I felt during that time and place, and seeing how much I've grown since then too. So it's nice to look back on, definitely.
So in the middle of all of this, you also moved from Atlanta to New York. And so what led to making that decision in the middle of your grief journey? Because to a lot of people, I'm sure that's like terrifying.
Yeah, that was honestly, moving was never something I thought I would actually do. So when Tony and I got married, there was a phase where I really wanted to live somewhere else other than Atlanta because I was born and raised in Atlanta. Tony had lived in a couple of places before settling down in Atlanta, so he got to experience what it was like living away from his hometown, but I never got to experience that. And I think a big part of that was being scared to go somewhere on my own. So the idea after Tony and I got married, like we talked about moving to another city together. And for me, that felt so much easier to do because I'm like, oh, I'm going to be moving with my best friend. I'm not going to be alone in that journey. And so that was something that we had planned to do at some point in the future. So then after Tony passed, I think it was really important for me personally to stay in Atlanta and stay close to my friends and family because that was my support system. And I also was not at a place where I was ready to let go of the house that Tony and I had bought together and the house that we turned into a home. And it just like the idea felt weird. Like, do I sell the house? It felt weird having strangers live in that house, so I wanted to stay there. And then I think it was about this time last year, so that was almost 2 years after Tony passed away. I think I just hit a wall and like hit a really dark place in my grief where every single day felt the same and it felt like an endless loop, and it was no longer bringing me peace or joy in a lot of ways. And so I just felt like if I stay here, life will be fine. But again, it will just be an endless loop. And is that really what I want right now? Or like if I were to make a decision on what I wanted right in this moment, what would that be? And like the first thought that I had was to move to New York City because that was also the only other city that I really wanted to try living in before. And so really right then and there, I just felt like I had to do that for myself. And I wasn't sure, obviously, if that was the right or wrong decision. I'm such a planner, so in making those decisions too, I'll usually spend a lot of time planning it. But then when I spend a lot of time doing that, I end up never doing it. So I was like, I just have to go for it. And if it's, and things will just fall into place, and whatever I need to do to get there, I will make that happen. And so, yeah, I felt like that was the first time in so long I felt excited about anything. And it made me feel like Tony was with me in that decision because normally I'm not the type that's very calm about big decisions like that. And I felt a lot of peace during that time. So I felt like it was the right time for me to do that.
Your story reminds me so much of a book that Rachel and I read in our grief book club called The Passion Project. And not saying it's exactly the same, but very similar about losing a spouse and moving to a new city and trying to find pockets of things that enlighten your life again after such tragic loss.
Yeah. Oh, I should read that book.
You should. It's really cute.
Okay.
Yeah, it's cute, but also very relatable. Finding the excitement again and doing things, even if you feel scared to do it, you need to feel that excitement again. I think that's such a huge part about living with grief is like you have to let yourself feel excited for life again. And it's really easy to not be excited for life and to just like be in that mode where, like you said, living life and every day looks the same. And I feel like I can get stuck in those patterns of kind of controlling everything.
Yeah.
And then I let that go. And all of a sudden I'm like, 2 really cool things I got invited to go to this month. Also along with that Coco Kind brand trip. And it's like about just like going for it, even if it's scary. So I related so much, but definitely read that book.
Okay.
It's a really fun, relatable book. I'm starting to see it online more, but before, especially like when I experienced loss like 10 years ago, I didn't see that ever happening. So what made you decide to share your journey?
It's actually so crazy because a few months before Tony had passed, a widow randomly popped up on my For You page, and I kind of dove into watching all of her videos, and I would cry with her, and just it was so surreal to even hear about someone so young losing their partner. And that was a few months before Tony had passed. So then after Tony passed, I actually thought about that creator, and I don't remember who it is, but it made me realize that there are so many thoughts that you have in grief. And of course, everyone thinks about random stuff throughout the day, but grief is all consuming, that literally every part of my thoughts is infiltrated by grief, or like I see everything in a different lens. And I have great friends around me who I can share about anything with. But then at some point, I know that they would be so willing to listen to me talk about it for the 20th time in a day. But at some point, I felt bad in doing that. And I felt like I was a burden. And so it's kind of why I was like, people share crazy things on TikTok. It's almost like you're kind of sharing things into the air, and it's not directed at anybody per se. So I thought, okay, well, I kind of want to do that. And honestly, in the beginning, I didn't really share details, or I didn't talk about much. I didn't really talk about what I was thinking. And then I was like, why don't I do that? This is exactly what it's for. And other widows would again pop up on my For You page, and I'm like, oh, that is so brave of them to be able to share such vulnerable moments. I should try doing that and see if it helps me. And it definitely did help me. And I felt like I naturally am a very vulnerable and honest person, but I think through different things that happen in your life, there were seasons where I was really closed off. And I think that tends to happen after traumatic events, because you just don't want to talk about those things. And I found myself doing that in my grief. Like, I got to a place where I kind of didn't want to talk about it because it was still very traumatic for me. And I recognized that, and I was like, oh, this is not a good pattern for me. And so I kind of just have to practice talking about it in order to stay open and stay vulnerable. So it was like an exercise, and I feel like it just got a little bit easier to talk about grief every single time I did that.
Yeah, that's what me and Kendel did with like the podcast and with our social media, is we kind of processed a lot of our grief as we talked about it with each other and started deciding this is the topic. And so many things Kendel would say, I'm like, I didn't even think about it that way, or process, or things like you don't know, because when you're handling it by yourself, you don't always see all the things or even acknowledge how big it is or how crazy something is. Like, we did a holiday series and it's supposed to be lighthearted and like, we're going to get you through. And it was so hard. Like, it got so dark. And I think I had the hardest holiday season because of that series, but in the way that I finally process what the holidays are to me. I finally accepted that the holidays are different to me now, and it brings a lot of sadness, and accepting what it looks like right now for me. And so when me and Kendel went through that series, we're like, oh, this is not what we had set in for it to be. We were just trying to be a resource for people. And instead it kind of was also a resource for us as we went through it. So I do think it's very helpful to just say it out loud. And there's so many other people that that agree or are feeling the same thing. I see it so often online where people say something like, oh, I relate to it. On the flip side, I do see a lot of people that say something and I'm like, I don't relate to that at all, because everyone grieves differently. And I think people also need to be aware about that. Someone's grief story you might not relate to it at all. And that's totally fine, because like everyone processes it.
Yeah, it's so different.
So different.
And even depending on who you lost in your life, that's also very different. And it's really just more about my understanding of grief widens as we talk about it more, and I hear more things, because I'm like, oh, I never really thought of it in that perspective. But that's interesting. Even if I don't necessarily feel the same way, I'm like, oh, that's something that I can be more mindful of as I go about my grief as well.
I think that's a perfect segue to talk about the Living Well series that you did. And do you mind sharing with the listeners how it got started and what does Living Well look like for you right now?
Yeah, the Living Well series, again, I don't even remember what was my first video in that series, but I think when you talk about grief so openly, there's a lot of it that is very sad and a lot of it that is very heavy. And when all of my videos were like that, it was kind of like, oh, I feel heavy because I'm not really talking about the things that are good or the things that have brought me joy in my life. And so when I thought about going about my day-to-day life, every day I try to find those pockets of joy, like no matter how small it may be. And so for me, I wanted to just create a series where I'm just going about my daily life, vlogging about what I do and like what are the moments that brought me joy in that day and what are the things that I learned from that day. And so for me now, living well means acknowledging what your grief is and acknowledging how you feel that day, but also not letting that define what your day is going to be like. Because some days I'll wake up
Yeah.
and genuinely I'm already in a bad mood and I already feel the grief is so heavy and I don't really want to do anything. And there are days where I won't do anything. But then there are days where I'm like, I need to go outside and see some sunshine and do something. And I do that and I end up feeling happier in that moment. And so it's just really celebrating every day and trying to live my best, not just for me, but really living a life that Tony deserved to live as well. And that makes me also feel like I'm not just living for myself, but I'm living for my future self. I'm living for Tony and I'm living for just beyond just me. And I think that gives me more drive to go out and do that.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. And I think like such a great reminder for all of us and wherever we are in our grief to hold on to that idea because it's hard to remind ourselves when it's really dark that we do have the power to acknowledge it, but still pursue on through our day and say, this doesn't have to define my whole life.
And I felt like it's not just relevant for people who are grieving either. I feel like living well is something that is relevant to everybody. Anyone who's going through a tough time, even if it's not necessarily related to grief, I feel like that's something that a lot of people are trying to do in their day to day.
Yeah, I related so much when you said that grief is sad and you don't only talk about grief. I used to have, like on my personal TikTok, it used to have grief in the name. And then I took it out because I was like, I don't only want to talk about grief. I want to talk about the fun things. I want to focus more on like how I'm trying to live a good life with grief and figuring it out, because there's days that I'm sad, there's days that I'm happy, and there's really good things that happen. But it's always a mix, and you can see that I might cry, but I'll also go on a trip or like, go somewhere new or get coffee or tacos. Like, you have to keep living, and I think that's really important to show, but not everyone is comfortable sharing that. Not everyone is in that place, but I think it's really important to focus on that as well, because it's like if your mind is always sad and you only talk about that, I do think that, like you said, is a really hard place to be.
Yeah, and I think when you go through such intense loss, it's so easy to define yourself as, I'm only a griever. But that's not all you are, that's just part of who you are and part of who you'll forever be. But at the end of the day, I'm still trying to find out, who is Sabrina now? I'm not just a griever, but, I have other interests and I'm trying to explore those areas too. So it's really about finding yourself again too, and finding out who you are in this new season of life.
And I think that's where the excitement should be, in figuring that out. And in that, and finding excitement, a lot of people feel shame or they feel bad about feeling joy and like feeling happy again. Do you have those moments where you feel like tension between honoring your grief and honoring Tony and choosing to live well and find joy? How do you balance that feeling?
Well, yeah, I feel that all the time. I think the sense of guilt and grief is something you just can't ever escape. And it will show up in such random things about like, oh, if I go to a new restaurant, I feel guilty that Tony is not here, being able to go to this new place with me. But then I remember that, when you think about this idea of love, I don't really think guilt is part of that. For me, like Tony, who loved me so much, would never want me to feel guilty for seeking out new things or trying new things. And that perspective has helped me a lot. Like, okay, if I feel guilty, that's what I feel. And I'm not going to try to pretend like I don't feel guilty. But then when I think of the perspective that like Tony would also be so happy for me to do these things, then I'm like, yeah, like even if I feel guilty, why don't I just try it out? And who knows, like maybe afterwards it'll be something that doesn't make me feel as guilty. And you just never know. And you kind of have to, regardless of sometimes how you feel, just kind of go for it and see how your feelings change afterwards.
Yeah, me and Kendel talk about that saying that people say like they would want you to be happy. Just be happy because they'd want you to be happy, and how people get so reactive to that phrase. And I get that. If you're feeling sad, you don't see how it can get better. You're just drowning in your grief. You're drowning in the sadness in this world that just feels so out of place. If someone tells it that to you, they make it sound so simple, right? Like they would want you to be happy, stop being sad. And you're like, if I knew how to do that, if I knew how to feel happy in a world without them, I would just do it. I personally like saying it to myself because I know that they would want me to be happy, because my parents and my sister were my biggest supporters for everything. They cheered me on all the time. And I can say that to myself. And like you said with Tony, like you had to see that perspective. I think it's something that it's not helpful if someone tells you that. It's something, I think, a growing moment to be able to say that to yourself. Like they would want me to be happy, and know that like they would want you to be happy in this lifetime. I feel like that is an important moment when you can actually feel that and believe that they do, but they would want me to be happy, and I should keep going and I should keep trying. I think that's an important milestone of some sort.
Yeah.
What have you learned by sharing your grief journey online so publicly, just strangers and friends alike, and what has that looked like connecting with a larger grief community?
It's interesting. It's not always great. I think one big picture, obviously connecting with people who have experienced grief has been so encouraging for me, because I'm like, oh, I'm not alone. It's such a tragic thing to feel, and I would never want other people to feel this way either. But reality is that there are people out there who's going through similar things, who will feel similar things to what I'm feeling. And so it's so nice to be able to just connect with people who understand that a bit better, so that when you have conversations with them, there's that camaraderie of, oh, this person can understand, at least on a personal level, like what I may be going through, even though it may be different. But also when you share anything publicly, especially if you share your personal life publicly, you're also going to get unwelcome opinions. And, people have the right to share their opinions, and that's just... Do they? I mean, everyone's going to have their opinions, and it's a choice whether they choose to express it or not. And I think that's something that when I became more serious about talking about grief online, that was like, okay, well, I have to really accept that. And that has truly made me grow as a person, because now it's this mentality that you cannot control how people feel about you. And so really focus on yourself and focus on the things that you can control. And that has been a huge learning lesson for me, because I've never been really good at that. And Tony always was the one that told me, don't care so much about what other people think about you, or like what other people have to say. And I really am learning that so much more now. So in that sense, of course, there are moments where it's really, really difficult, but I'm trying to take things less personally. And if someone says something nasty online about me, like, I'm also learning that everyone is going through their own problems, and so I shouldn't take that so personally. But that really should not stop me from doing what I feel like I'm led to do. And I think every time I see the negative parts, it honestly grows the positive parts about sharing my grief online too. So it makes me feel like, no, this is something that I'm willing to fight for and I'm willing to do, even if I'm not supported 100% by everyone in this world. So it makes me feel more convicted to do that.
Yeah, there's something within what you were saying. As grievers, you realize how short life is and what's the point of this negative emotion or energy, especially as grievers when you already feel like you're knocked down and very vulnerable experiencing your grief. But like going through grief for a few years now, and I see this so much in Rachel, that while in those first like defining times, you're so vulnerable and like I kind of like describe it as like it's such an open wound that you feel like you're displaying to the world. But like grief forges you in fire where like you get so tough and you come to a point where you're like, I don't give a hell what people think. Like I'm already dealing with life and death as it is. So like what does it matter what someone else thinks about my life? You know, like I'm thinking about bigger things going on, much less like the petty people say things online about.
For sure. Yeah. I think when you become so close to loss and this idea of death, you're really just like, okay, well, life really is so short. Like I really need to do what I want to do and focus on myself. And that's probably like the best thing that you can do.
Yeah. It's also such a representation of them and like even them as a person, not necessarily even what they're going through, because some people just write stuff and they just say it and you can't possibly know what this feels like and you would even dare to say that to somebody. Like if you know the amount of pain that I have inside of me, you would never say that to somebody else. And I just always think of it like, what kind of person are you that is something that you would say to another human being? And if I can watch my dad, my mom, and my sister die, and I'm not writing those type of comments to people, I'm not being mean to people. I'm not perfect, but I'm not trying to make someone feel bad. I'm trying to help people. And if I can do that, what the hell is wrong with you? Like that's like my thought. And honestly, I feel bad if like that is the type of person, because I still always try to be good and to be a kind person. And me and Kendall always say like, we could easily just go off, off the rails. And people would be like, okay, that's how they're grieving. And people do that. And it's like, if we decided to not do that and to not leave nasty comments to people and not be mean to people, like that says a lot about us and the kind of people that we are. And whenever I see that, I laugh. Like whenever I see mean comments, I more so laugh because I'm like, how do you think that this is okay? And depending on what it is, I usually call it out. And I know you do that too, Sabrina. And this isn't one of the questions, but I'm curious of why you do it. I do it because I'm in a place where I'm not sensitive about it. Like I know how I feel about grief and I'm fine with how I feel about grief. Like I'm still learning, but like I'm fine that like this is going to be with me forever. Like I've lost both my parents, my sister. Like that is a huge, heavy burden to carry every day. And I'm okay with how I feel about that. So when people say things to me, I can respond in a way that's just like, do not say this to people, and I can combat that. But I don't want someone to see that and think that's okay to say it to somebody or like them internalize it. So I will reply to a comment where I feel like if other people see it, I'm like, I want to stand up against this type of comment and conversations about grief. But like, I've seen you do it a ton too. Why do you do it?
So I do it for various reasons. Sometimes I think people just comment thinking that, oh, the creator who made this video is never going to read this comment. So like I can just be nasty. And so sometimes I respond to just be like, oh, I'm a human and I read your comments and this is my human response to your response. And I think sometimes maybe when people who write those comments have a connection with that person, then they're like, oh shoot, sorry, I didn't mean it like that. There are people who do that, who say that like, oh, I didn't realize you would read this comment. I didn't mean to come off that way. And so then I'm like, okay, well, then we had a decent conversation about maybe why you shouldn't be doing this because it is hurtful and people do read these things. And then there are times when people are so illogical about what they say. And then even in your response, they'll respond again, like very illogically, then I'm like kind of like, okay, well, this person, you can't reason with them. So this is not like a battle that I'm willing to fight, because no matter how much I fight, it's just they're not going to see my point of view, and that's just a loss that I have to accept. And then other times, honestly, a lot of the comments that I do respond to, it helps me realize, oh, there are so many misconceptions about grief, and there's a lot of just like wrong information. And so I want to address it more as, oh, this is a perspective of a griever. So maybe you can benefit from learning that perspective and hearing what I have to say. And so for me, it's almost like that's a teaching moment. And that's hopefully some way where people can, if they had that similar thought, like, oh, seeing what it would come across as to a griever, maybe that will help them understand why certain comments like that are hurtful.
Yeah, I'll never understand why people comment and act like you wouldn't see it, or that you're not human. Sometimes it happens where like I reply to a comment, they delete it, and it's like, I'm a human. I am sharing this story, and if I can, I will call you out. And my go-to line now is like, I'm sending my parents and my sister after you, and you cannot hide from them. That's what I reply to them. I can't see your face, but they don't need that. They don't need that information. So I was like, good luck. And that makes me feel good. And honestly, I feel like they'll do it for me. What's the point of having a pack of ghosts if they can't do shit like that for me, you know? So
no, they have your back. Good. Yeah, they have your back.
So if you ever want to take that one and send Tony after people, feel free. Yeah. Because I'm like, you can't hide. You might be like user 754321, but you know what? My sister knows who you are. So watch out. She's my big sister.
That's so funny.
It makes me feel good. So for anyone listening who is in survival mode in their grief journey right now and not feeling any joy and not thinking about even living well, what is one small step you would recommend or encourage them to take to live more fully?
Ooh, that's a good question. Honestly, you really never know when your body's going to be ready to come out of that survival mode. And for me, I think it took over a year for me to even get out of that mindset, but my body was honestly still in survival mode up until beyond 2 years. And so for me, I would say listen to your body, your heart, your head. Don't push yourself so much beyond what you're ready to handle in that moment. But it can literally be the smallest thing, like running an errand for yourself. Even for me, it took me so long to make a doctor's appointment because I just didn't want to step foot into a hospital. I didn't want to know what was going on with my body. And it made just even that decision of, okay, well, today I have one chore that I'm going to take care of, and that's to make an appointment with my primary care physician. And I did it. And I felt honestly like once I did that, I was like, you know, I'm kind of ready to tackle on more things. So then I would do a little more each time I felt that motivation to do so. And I think people will surprise themselves by seeing like, oh, when you do one thing, you are honestly more open to doing more things. And it can be like a snowball effect of good things that you're trying to create for yourself. But there are also days where you really don't feel like getting out of bed. Like, don't force yourself either. I've had so many days where I just told myself, well, I'm going to lie here because I really don't want to do anything else. And I respect that. I will do that. And then I wake up the next day and I'm like, it's a new day. So what am I ready to tackle today? And just take it really moment by moment, not even day by day, honestly.
Yeah, I always say start with taking a shower every day. And then like, if you can, get ready, put on an outfit, but start by just like propelling yourself, because I definitely know like there's days like I haven't showered, I look in the mirror and I'm like, oh God, like this is me. Honestly, posting online has helped me also like push to like, okay, I'm not going to record if I look like haggard or something. I don't always have like makeup and stuff, but it also pushes me to like, okay, I want to present myself in a positive way. Yeah, it's just like taking that one little step that I think is super important, and trying to track that, I think, for me. But Kendel, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I was in the same position as you, Sabrina, where it was like even the simple tasks seemed so big and daunting, and you're also just not motivated to do it.
Yeah.
And you're like,
what's the point?
What's the point of doing it? And then I was also in the frame of mind of like, what's the point of doing it if we're all gonna die anyways?
Yeah.
I was like such in a nihilistic view. But I have to keep lists because I am so like chronically forgetful. But like just like being like, okay, out of this whole list, what is actually the most urgent, most important thing I have to do today?
Mm-hmm.
And if I could get that one thing, I'm like, all right, everything else
That's
is
a good
like,
day.
if I get it done, great. But I got the most urgent thing off the list.
Yeah. No, that's a good idea.
We always like to offer our listeners something to try throughout the week, just a little nudge. And Sabrina, can you give us a living well prompt for the listeners, something small that our listeners can try at home?
I think a good challenge will be to reach out to someone that you trust and that you're open to sharing with, and just ask them if it's okay for you to share something about your grief journey that you felt this week. And I think that's something I also want to do more of, because I've gotten to a place where my friends won't necessarily ask me every single day, how are you doing in your grief? We talk about random things that happen on our day, but I want to be also intentional about sharing what's on my mind, especially around grief, even if someone doesn't necessarily prompt me to answer that question. Sometimes you just want to share with somebody. And so if there's someone that is on your mind that you want to share with, I think that would be awesome. And it would create, more dialogue, and maybe it will be a conversation that's really encouraging to you.
That's perfect.
Yeah, Kendel always talks about that as well, as like opening up and talking to people. So that's something I'm working on. Kendel was better at that, so I'm always a work in progress.
It's hard. There are some days where I just don't even want to open my mouth. So I think that's also something that gets easier the more you do it too.
So Sabrina, what has sparked joy for you this week, big or small?
Ooh. The weather in New York City right now is so nice that it makes me want to be outside more. So even over the weekend, I was just bopping around the city, and that's one of my favorite things to do, but I honestly hated it over the summertime because it was so hot. But weather is so nice now, and I can sense that fall is coming. So that just even walking around outside with a breeze felt so, so good. And that definitely brought me a lot of joy this week.
For me, so unfortunately, my brother was in a car accident.
Oh, no.
He doesn't have a car right now, so we're going car hunting. Oh yeah,
okay.
He's fine. It was a small thing, but the car was totaled, unfortunately. So we're going car shopping.
Okay.
And at first I was like, man, this is going to take up a lot of time out of my day because he's now like dependent on me and my vehicle. And I shouldn't have seen it like that. And I would do this for both my brother and sister without a doubt. But it has led to so many great conversations with him, and just sitting in the car together, and just to see how much he's grown since I'm 6 years older than him. And so he's just so thoughtful and very inquisitive. It just has such great introspection. And I was like, man, I shouldn't have seen that as an obligation or like a chore that I now have to do. This is really an opportunity to be closer with my brother, and a chance that I never had before. So that's kind of a little thing that I was like, that actually makes me really happy. Like, I'm really happy to serve my brother in that regard.
Yeah. Get to know him a little bit better too.
Yeah.
And just to be clear, Kendel is a very kind of like generous person. So even though she said that, like, and this is really for all the listeners, even though she said that, like, Kendel would always do that. Like, she might have thought in her head for like 2 seconds, but she's the type that she's going to go above and beyond for everyone. So I don't want anyone to listen to that and get it twisted. Like, that's who Kendel is. So my thing that sparked me joy this week is a friend invited me to a wine event that's happening next weekend. And depending on whenever this is posted, I probably would have already gone. It's a nice wine event in San Francisco that I wanted to go. And I had literally just said out loud, I want to be invited to like wine events.
Oh.
And she invited me to go as her +1. And it was just literally like the same day. So manifest, guys, because it comes out, it happens.
Yeah. That's so sweet. Do you like
so
wine?
That's something. I live in San Francisco, so I love wine tasting.
Okay.
Like, I have so many bottles of wine, but I love the experience of like wine tasting and going to wine events. So the venue is really nice. It's a very pretty place. So that is what sparked me joy.
Nice.
And for those listening, we want to hear your moments of joy as well. So you can share that on social media, or you can email that to us and we will share them on future episodes.
Yes, we'd love to hear that from everyone else. So Sabrina, thank you so much for sharing your story and your grief with us today. You've shown us how to live beautifully with your grief and live well. And that grief can be messy and sad, but also full of joy. And that's what we really want this season to be about, is that grief can be hard, but let's have conversations about people trying to also live a good life. Like, let's have those conversations, because we don't have enough people talking about what they're trying, because we might fail at things that we try, but we have to keep trying. So thank you so much for coming on, because I think it's so important to have these conversations, just to like give people exposure to, like, this is what I'm trying. Might work for you, might not, but like, try anything. Try whatever works for you.
Yeah, of course. And thank you for inviting me. I feel like this is a really awesome topic, especially because I feel like a lot of us have felt moments where someone's like, oh my gosh, you're so happy. It's so good, like, seeing you be so happy. And I'm like, I'm happy, but I'm not. And so I think,
you're like, I'm happy, but I'm sad.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's living beautifully doesn't mean living happily all the time. It doesn't mean living sad. It's a mixture of everything. And I think it's beautiful when you acknowledge what you feel and make space also to feel other things as well. And it doesn't always have to just be one or the other. It's always going to be a mix, because grief is so complex. But you know, there's always pockets of joy that you can experience through the grief too.
Follow Sabrina on SabForTony on TikTok, Instagram, and go show her love and support, and, you know, follow her advice through all her series and her perspectives.
Yay.
Don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and share this episode with someone who needs to hear it.
Yay!
Thank you so much, Sabrina. So we just had Sabrina on our podcast, and the lesson that I'm going to take away from her episode is really how bold she was, because my sister also moved to New York City from California. She moved from Atlanta. But I think it's always just a good reminder of what life can be like if you're being bold and finding that excitement again for life. And so much that she talked about in this episode, I related to, of just like, you can feel so stuck in your grief. You can feel like every day is the same. And then you also grapple with life is so short. You see people pass away. You see people that you didn't expect to pass away so early. And you're like, should I just keep going on this rat race of just tumbling and every day looks the same and nothing feels exciting? Or should you just jump and be like, I need to use this situation, this grief, this hard thing to like catapult me into living the best life possible. And I think what she did is really bold. I think it's really hard to sell the house that you had with your husband to move to a new city and decide like, I'm going to keep living. And I think that's such a bold, exciting choice that she made, and she followed through it, because it is hard. It's one to decide something. It's another thing to do it. And I think there's a lot of takeaways from this episode where people can be like, wow, that's such an amazing attitude to have towards grief and like your continued healing and your future. So that is just an amazing like reminder, more so like than a lesson of how to try to tackle grief. But what about you?
Yeah, 100%. I loved meeting Sabrina. She's so kind and just like very gentle around grief when it's such like a prickly topic as it is. I loved that she was bringing up vulnerability in our grief and how she has built a community and a space for people to talk about grief. I really loved how she brought up that grief is so messy and grief doesn't always bring out the best parts of us. You know, like we're working on being the best versions of who we are after grief, but when you're in the thick of it, grief brings out a lot of these tough things you have to deal with about yourself and about your relationships. And I think it's like such a nice, gentle reminder that we can't always love people in their most perfect form. Like they're human and they're gonna fail, but we love them through it anyways. And just to love them, you know, when they're down on the ground as well as when they're at their best. Thank you so much for listening to the episode this week. And just a reminder that we're not professionals, just professional grievers, figuring it out alongside you, one episode at a time.